Good morning and welcome back to some Pathologic. Alright, in the last episode, we were informed that our mentor, the person who invited us here, the town local doctor, Isidor what was his name? Isidor Burak, was murdered as well as Simon. So both of our leads, both of our contacts that we had in this town are now gone. We have also been informed that this town held both of those persons in very high regards, and they have no idea who could have actually gone and taken their lives. So we have to go back to Isidor's house. However, since he's been murdered and the house is a crime scene, there's two patrolmen standing in our way. So we must go and talk to the head of the guard, Alexander, who lives in this lovely dark mansion called the Rod. So, without further ado, let's go into the Rod and talk to Mr. Alexander, who I presume is this lovely gentleman right here.
They say hitting hard is a good enough start.
Sure is, man, sure is. Alexander Saburov. So, I finally get to see you. Yes, you really do look like a messenger of sorrowful times. In any case, welcome to the Rod. Our meeting is quite significant in a way. Facing the changes with open eyes and taking their first blow is my duty. Do you think we're on the verge of an especially unhappy era? No grim events have clouded our existence since last summer. The country has cured its war wounds. Commercial communications have been repaired. Astrologists expect nothing ill. Do you hold astrologists' opinion in high regard? Sometimes I have to. Are you an astrologist? I'm a ruler. Astrology can be very curious, but I cannot allow it to influence my decisions. I have to act according to factual circumstances. Would you agree? I definitely would.
The outcome was to be expected, I'm afraid.
So you've come to
Simon
meet
was
with
good.
Simon, haven't you? What can I do for you now? I was actually invited by Isidor, so I came to meet him first and foremost. But now it turns out that he's been murdered, yes. Looks like the murderer is always one step ahead of you, doesn't it? The same one that took Simon's life too. At least that's what the conclusions suggested by the information at my disposal. Same pattern, same signature. So were there any traces? Look, I haven't been there myself. I'm quite content with the interrogating suspects, especially since we already know who we're after. You can join the hunt, by the way. I can describe his features. Who is it then? You wouldn't believe it, it's his own son. The fellow came back after being away for quite a while. His father has sent him to study surgery when he was but a greenhorn. Quite a lot he has learned, huh? A wandering scholar turned evil to the bone. All of that just to grab the inheritance. Wait, how did you figure that one out? In all honesty, it's hard to explain that to an outsider like you. Do you believe in such a thing as clairvoyance, Bachelor? Of course I do. Well, you should get to know my wife then. Or better yet, those who have already had opportunities to witness the power of her prophecies. Former doubters, first and foremost. Rationalist. She's got something to say to you too, by the way. So your wife called out Isidor's son specifically? Not specifically, no, but it all adds up, and the circumstances of Simon's death make you wonder too. Isidor's son arrived here last night. The timing speaks against him. It even matches the time it takes to get from the Crucible to Isidor's house. That's not enough. I'll have to take the investigation into my own hands. Is there anyone who can be of help to me, apart from your wife? There are very few good analysts in town. Everyone is more or less superstitious here. Except for one Yulia... This is testing my vocabulary and my pronunciations. One Yulia Lyuricheva. Yulia Lyuricheva. Perhaps. A most level-headed and reasonable person. The only person to remain skeptical about Katerina's talents too. Without a shadow of a doubt, she has her own picture of events. She always does. Who is this Yulia? She came here with an engineering team when the town was being rebuilt, did logistics and maybe communications. Not sure. They said she's a true expert in her field. Smart, yes, a polymath. Then the team left, but she stayed. She has my respect, but not my fondness. Very well. I'll speak to this Yulia. Okay, Yulia lives there. Fair enough.
They say hitting hard is a good enough start.
So who are the people guarding the house? Those are the volunteer patrolmen. We usually keep around 20 of them, but I've increased the number recently to 150 or so. Really? Why do you need so many? There's unrest in the termitory. If I weren't certain that Isidor's been murdered by his son, I would even consider the crime to be politically motivated. Isidor was preparing to take over the kin and become its leader. At least according to the information I have. What's the kin? The steppe people who work in the abattoir, many of the factory workmen. An ignorant patriarchal pile that hasn't changed much since the Stone Age. They look human enough, but if you look closer, they're just beasts. Believe me when I'm telling you that I'm not snobbish in the slightest, but there's good reason to call them that. Yes, Isidor has always had the air of a person untouched by civilization. Goodness! Isidor was an educated, modern man compared to them. They revered him too. He got to know modern knowledge but never left his people. A complicated man, may he rest in peace. Yes, I'm sorry about Isidor. I don't think you're aware of the fact that Isidor actually came to me last night, just after he had returned, and warned me that there were some ominous events ahead of us. I took that as an unofficial warning about his upcoming takeover. So you took measures. Evidently. I've mobilized the patrols. I see what you're implying, Bachelor, but I'm not insane. Engineering Isidor's murder, as a matter of fact, a strong, independent kin under Isidor's rule would have been way more useful to me. Really? How come? Because that would weaken the power of the Honorable Vladislav Olgimsky, who's pocketed the economy of the whole town. He'd rather see the kin as a dumb and speechless herd. And come to think of it, well, I'm sure you understand where I'm going with this. I do. Oh, okay, so tab is my fists. Very well. Let's go talk to Yulia. And to save you from our lumbering, from enduring the uneventful lumbering towards Julia's house, we're going to fast forward this, so roll the montage. Hello. My heart is crying for my poor children. How are my dearests doing? Is everything alright? A woman's share is hard. You've got a curious town here. I've never expected to see something like this in such a remote place. Everyone's tired of the endless construction work. We want some quiet. Is there a lot of construction going on? Not a lot, but I cannot shrug away the feeling that the world is changing all too quickly. The rulers invite architects from the capital and they turn everything upside down. It's fun for the children, but a torment for us. I'm sorry to hear that. And just like that, we're at Yulia's house. Alright, Yulia, whose last name I can't remember. Let's talk. That's some actually quite nice artwork. A little study corner, reading corner. Not much lighting there. Although if you open the curtains every once in a while. What's this? Confessional of some sort? No. Yulia! Talk to me, Yulia.
This girl is a changeling. She's not the murderer.
Yuria Yuricheva. I seem to have lost any capacity for observation. My mind is out of tune. Things no longer add up. Before, I had no trouble forming a trustworthy tessellation out of the most imperceptible contingencies. Now, I simply cannot get my head around it. Could it be that I'm dying? The steppe air is way too thick. I think that's what causes it. Oh no, Herbatviridae is in blossom. I grant you, but then it blooms every year. Every year the steppe is filled with its stupefying vapors. The issue I am having, however, has nothing to do with fatigue or perplexity. It is just that I've lost my ability to make distinctive events coincide. Everyone has that ability. You don't seem to understand what I'm saying. Let me elucidate. This game is challenging my vocabulary and my pronunciation of things so hard. Anyways, let me elucidate. A single word someone utters may precipitate the birth of their own murder. This line of philosophizing is barely an intellectual novelty, and it is particularly relevant in our neck of the woods. I sometimes feel like I could touch the notions of cause and effect with the tips of my fingers. But now I'm being tedious, I reckon. Not at all.
My chest seems to be filled with cotton wool.
Does it now? So you have traveled all the way here only to find that both people you wanted to see are brutally murdered. Is this how the story goes? I do hope that your visit is not in any way related to those most unfortunate circumstances. I have to find whoever it is that killed Isidor and Simon, and I wanted to ask for your help. Saburov told me that you have a gift for all manner of investigative inquiry. I am certainly no better investigator than you. I never had a chance to search for a murderer before. The best I can offer is to fill in the blanks with whatever mysterious supernatural entities seem most fitting. Shabnak-Adur is the simple man scarecrow. I would have followed a different narrative. What kind of narrative? Consider the circumstances of his death. They said Simon had locked himself up in the evening and consequently died in the morning inside of the mansion, in a chamber with some peculiar name. In this case, I would suggest that Simon was poisoned. By the Canes, I would have thought. But I know their family all too well. Their mutual loyalty is only rivaled by their arrogance towards anyone who is not one of them. They hold the princely sage who stands at the head of their family in highest esteem. They believe that a single dishonorable act will tarnish their name for generations to come. I doubt any of them would have stooped to this, no matter whether they wanted to or not. Poisoned? How did you arrive to this conclusion? I don't believe you understand what he died in focus really implies. Do you know what the Canes refer to as focus? You don't seem to grasp the semantics of the term. These are the Canes for you. These kinds of innuendos are their forte. Well, what is the focus then? The focus is anything but an abstraction. Quite the opposite, in fact. It is governed by mathematically rigid regularities. You see, no one but the owner of a focus may get inside. This can only mean that Simon had brought the killer with him, or rather, within him, since no physical object may be brought into focus either. How do you know that? Who doesn't? Okay, now you're just being... Anyways, who doesn't? The Canes are notoriously passionate about all manner of synthetic anomalies. They will never pass up the opportunity to devise a Kunststück. I'm implying that I'm to understand that you imply a construct, but let's go with the game's terminology. A Kunststück that will allow them to warp Kunststück. That okay, let's not get too hung up on this word. Let's just call it Kunststück and be done with it. They will never pass up the opportunity to devise a Kunststück that would allow them to warp space, challenge physics, or manipulate optics. Metaphysically, a focus can be compared to a camera obscura. Do note that the name is not unfitting. No, it is entirely impossible for someone to get inside. A curious conclusion, but an incorrect one. Simon was disfigured and bleeding. His bones were broken. Is that so? Well, this does introduce a different perspective. Did you say Isidor was the last person to see Simon? The question is, who did he see before? The sun had not yet set when Isidor returned from the steppe. However, he came to Simon well after midnight. The question naturally arises, where did he spend the missing few hours? That is why I'm trying to trace Isidor's steps. I want to walk the same route. Don't get me wrong though. Was Isidor seen by Saburov by any chance? He was. He warned Saburov of an upcoming storm. Alright, let me suggest then that while he was in the steppe, he saw or learned something that he wanted to report to all three ruling families. In this case, either of the Olgimsky family should have been on his itinerary, especially since Burak was one of their own men. Was he now? Definitely, the Bull Project, from the abattoir to the railway, is controlled by the Olgimsky family. If Isidor's discovery had anything at all to do with the kin, Isidor would have certainly relayed it to Vlad. So do make sure to pay a visit to the lump. So do make sure to pay a visit to the lump. That's the name of the Olgimsky mansion. Another fitting name, wouldn't you agree? Thank you, Yulia. What would I do without you? So this is the lump. Write it in. Where am I? And where's the lump? Okay, so it's just a short walk by the river. Do you have any other information to divulge?
Is a changeling. She's not the murderer.
So tell me, Yulia, do you like Eva Yan? Very much. It wouldn't be a stretch to say I absolutely admire her. Weird. I expected you to have a different opinion of her. She dons the mask of an absent-minded promiscuity, but this pose has nothing to do with what she really is. I'd be happy to be friends with her, but she does not understand me. And rightfully so, considering her eminence. I can't believe my ears. Sooner or later, a fervent believer may emerge from within her, dissolving her completely in the object of her adoration, after which she will probably kill herself. But I'd rather talk no more of that. Alrighty then. Now we have to go talk to Vlad. A lot of Slavic names are being thrown about here, and they are testing my pronunciation. Which is very weird because I'm Slavic as well, and seeing Slavic names written in English kind of messes with me. Anyways, we need to go and talk to Vlad. Alright then, we arrived at the lump. And I have to say, it's quite an unusual looking building. And I also have to add and agree with Yulia. That's quite a fitting name for it. Okay, so Vlad resides within the lump. Now, before we talk to Vlad, from my timer I see that we are all out of time for this particular episode. So I'm going to have to cut it here. The plot thickens. So apparently the focus is not what we thought it was. It was sort of a metaphysical place where one can't take any objects or any other people with them apart from themselves. Doesn't explain much, but it certainly makes the whole thing much easier and the whole murder mystery a lot more convoluted considering the circumstances. I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen next, but that will have to wait until the next episode. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, press that like button, subscribe, and click that bell button to see when the next episode comes out. Take care, y'all, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.